The crunchy snack you're mindlessly munching right now was born from pure spite. That's right, potato chips exist because a chef got so annoyed with a complaining customer that he decided to teach them a lesson. What started as culinary revenge became one of America's most beloved snacks. Today, we consume over 1.5 billion pounds of potato chips annually in the United States alone. They're perfectly engineered for maximum crunch, scientifically salted for optimal flavor, and packaged in ways that keep them fresh for months. We think of chips as a carefully planned product, designed by food scientists in sterile laboratories. But the truth is far more human and infinitely more petty. Our story begins in 1853 at Moon's Lake House, an upscale resort in Saratoga Springs, New York. This wasn't just any restaurant. Saratoga Springs was the playground of America's elite, where wealthy families would escape the summer heat and enjoy fine dining. The kitchen was run by George Crum, a chef of mixed African American and Native American heritage, who had built a reputation for his exceptional cooking skills. Crum took pride in his work, especially his French fries, which were thick, fluffy, and perfectly seasoned. They were prepared according to the French style that was popular among sophisticated diners of the era. For most customers, these fries were a highlight of their meal. But on one fateful summer evening, everything changed because of one impossibly picky customer. The customer, whose identity remains debated by food historians, sent back his plate of fries with a complaint that would echo through culinary history. The fries were too thick, he declared, too soggy, not crispy enough. He demanded something better. Most chefs might have simply cut the potatoes thinner and tried again. But George Crum wasn't most chefs. Frustration boiled over in that Saratoga Springs kitchen. Crum decided he'd had enough of this particular customer's demands. If the man wanted thin, crispy potatoes, then by God, he'd give him the thinnest, crispiest potatoes imaginable. Crum grabbed his sharpest knife and began slicing potatoes paper thin. So thin, they were almost translucent. But Crum wasn't finished with his culinary revenge plot. He dropped these impossibly thin potato slices into a vat of boiling oil and cooked them until they were golden brown and crispy as autumn leaves. Then, in a final act of defiance, he doused them with so much salt that they'd be almost inedible. This wasn't cooking anymore. This was warfare. Crum sent out his creation, fully expecting the customer to storm out in disgust. Instead, something magical happened. The customer took one bite, then another, then another. His eyes lit up with delight. These weren't just acceptable, they were extraordinary. The thin, crispy, salty discs were unlike anything he'd ever tasted. He asked for more. Word spread quickly through Moon's lake house. Other diners wanted to try these new Saratoga chips. What had started as an act of spite became the restaurant's most requested item. Crum found himself making batch after batch of his accidental creation, and each time, diners couldn't get enough. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In trying to create something terrible, Crum had stumbled upon something perfect. The thin slicing exposed more surface area to the oil, creating maximum crispiness. The high salt content didn't just season the chips. It enhanced the natural potato flavor and created an addictive quality that kept people reaching for more. George Crum eventually opened his own restaurant, Crum's House, where Saratoga chips became the signature dish. Wealthy visitors would travel to Saratoga Springs specifically to taste these revolutionary potato preparations. The chips became so associated with the area that they were known as Saratoga chips for decades. But the story doesn't end with one angry chef and his spite-driven innovation. The accidental invention sparked a culinary revolution that would reshape American snacking forever. Other restaurants began copying Crum's technique. Street vendors started selling paper cones filled with homemade chips. What had been a restaurant novelty was becoming a popular street food. The transition from restaurant delicacy to mass-produced snack took several decades. In the 1920s, entrepreneur Herman Lay began selling chips from the back of his car across the American South. His success led to the formation of the Lay's brand, which would eventually become synonymous with potato chips worldwide. The invention of the mechanical potato peeler in 1929 revolutionized chip production. Suddenly, manufacturers could process thousands of pounds of potatoes per hour instead of relying on hand slicing. This technological advancement made mass production economically viable and brought chip prices down to levels ordinary Americans could afford. World War II inadvertently boosted the chip industry when traditional snack foods became scarce due to rationing. Chips made from readily available potatoes and requiring minimal additional ingredients became a popular substitute for candy and other treats. Soldiers discovered that chips traveled well and provided quick energy, further cementing their place in American culture. The post-war boom saw explosive growth in the chip industry. Companies like Frito-Lay invested heavily in advertising, creating memorable campaigns that positioned chips not just as snacks, but as essential components of the American lifestyle. The famous slogan, "Bet you can't eat just one," wasn't just marketing genius. It was scientifically accurate. Modern food scientists have discovered that Crum's accidental creation triggers what researchers call the bliss point. The combination of salt, fat, and crunch activates pleasure centers in our brains, creating genuine physiological cravings. What started as spite had stumbled upon one of the most addictive food combinations possible. Today's chip industry bears little resemblance to Crum's kitchen experiment. Massive factories process millions of pounds of potatoes daily using computer-controlled systems that monitor everything from oil temperature to salt distribution. Flavors range from classic salt to exotic combinations that would have baffled 19th century diners. Yet at its core, every chip you eat connects back to that moment of frustration in a Saratoga Springs kitchen. One chef's decision to teach a difficult customer a lesson created an industry worth over $30 billion annually. It's a reminder that innovation often comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes our greatest breakthroughs happen when we're trying to prove a point rather than change the world. The next time you reach for that familiar crinkle of a chip bag, remember George Crum and his spite-driven invention. Sometimes the best ideas come not from careful planning, but from moments of pure, creative frustration.